discussions in preparation to our continuation today. So it's not deliberate to keep you waiting, but it's just to see that we do our job thoroughly. Yesterday I promised one of the numerous associations, so we need to trim them down. But one of our presenters yesterday said no, and the volume of shares we have all over, how can we say 85 is too much? It's even too small as far as it's concerned. We have Proactive Shareholders Association of Nigeria. If their representative is here, he should please come forward to make his presentation.
Hi. You're not there with the title.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Before this committee.
Before this committee.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
With the letterhead in Proactive Shareholders Association of Nigeria, dated 13th February 2012, forwarded to the Chairman, House Committee on Capital Market and Other Institutions, National Assembly Complex, Abuja, and then captioned the memorandum submitted by the members of Proactive Holders Association of Nigeria, PROSAN, to the members of the House Committee on Capital Market and Other Institutions for the public hearing on Nigerian capital market as part of efforts to resolve the crisis in the market and restore investors' confidence. Duly signed by one Mr. Oderinde Taiwo, which I suppose you are, as the national coordinator, and then by Mr. Nondu Okeke, who is the national legal advisor. Do you know anything about the letter?
Yes, sir.
You submitted the letter?
Yes, sir.
Please, clerk, come. I said later as the exact copy for.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We accept the said letter forming part of the documents to be used by this committee. Because we did not do that previously, we will mark them accordingly. We will give it an exhibit number. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me start with this word of the wise man and motto, the person of Dr. Miles Monroe. He said in one of his books, he said, a group of sheep, SHWP, being led by a lion, has opportunity and a greater chance of getting to their destination, unlike a group of lions being led by sheep, who are also having a goal of getting to a particular destination. Mr. Chairman, having said that, and that quotation, what's the implication in our presentation and I gathered this morning? I want to submit vis-a-vis this situation in the Nigerian capital market and the contribution of various stakeholders to the situation where we are, and how do we go into the other side. The two centers on the leadership, and we look at the global phenomenon. Leadership is the only thing. When we talk about strong institutions, our brother, the president of the United States of America, was saying, encouraging especially people from Asia and our brother Africa, brother from Africa continent. Is that the need for us to build a very strong institution where we really need to focus on leadership, and to see leadership as a thing that we should not handle with thing of levity in order to be able to get our country, our continent, to destination is desired. If you look at this thing with vis-a-vis our contribution, there are, as someone pointed out yesterday, there are 85 shareholders associations in Nigeria. But there's one thing unique about this particular group. We are the only one that be admitted into the world body. They call it World Federation of Investors of Corporations. Known and identified by the World Bank. We have about 39 membership of countries under it, and in their bylaw, they only admit only one group, who we can call shareholder association or investment club all over the world. And by His grace, we are the one representing this particular country. So, it's very, very important, whatever we say here, I know among that vote, because it has implication locally here and to the investors that we have in diaspora for our companies. So it really matters a lot. So this thing we have put here to say all this is going to really help us. And I want to also say this, that most of the things I want to say, it may not have a technical jargon or professional outlook, but the practical experiences we've gathered from the field, which I believe is going to help this honorable sitting in order to able to fast track their decisions, in order to come out with something that be somehow unique, able to move our market forward. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, let me bypass the introduction. Let me quickly go to what we perceive in our contribution, in our own observation. We members of Practitioners of Nigeria, PROSAN, believe that our capital market crisis was aggravated and it can be resolved if the following factors can be addressed. One, we talk about identifiable. They say there is no identifiable bailout or rescue package for Nigerian capital market. Sir, we believe that Nigeria, as part of the global world, that the effects of the global crisis was one of the reasons people and the stakeholders have been identified as one of the factors responsible for what we call near collapse of our capital market. In effect, other parts of the world, changes all over the world where this thing has really been affected, just like Nigeria was also affected. Their country have taken, or the capital market as a whole, in these exchanges, have taken one pragmatic step or the other. Take for instance, in the United States of America, they call it they call it stimulus packages. In faraway Asia, Japan, they call it stabilization fund in order to help them out of this. When this crisis was really biting hard, there was a particular step we took then. We wrote to the apex body then that, look, we may not be able to have that particular money, like billions or trillions of dollars, all these countries are rolling out. But you may come in from a kind of fiscal policy. So for instance, we now give about suggestion. One of the suggestions we gave was that in 1989, for every dividend payout, there's what we call withholding tax. It used to be 5% during Babangida regime, when there was so money in circulation. I think then the economics advisor advised that they need to increase the withholding tax to 10%. We now said these are the best opportunity for you to encourage the investors by reducing the withholding tax from 10% to 5%, or you remove it tactically until there is a kind of, we begin to sense a kind of recovery. That was one of the things we suggested to them at that particular time. But one thing I observed, because of the activities of shareholders association in Nigeria, which I also put the blame at the doorstep of the apex authority in this country, the thing was not well regulated. Everybody can just come, people can just come and say they are shareholders association without anybody asking them questions. These are people, ask them who are your board of trustees. Is the same person will be the national coordinator, the wife will be the vice president, And that's why we feel about 85 shareholders that somebody identified here yesterday. I mean, I don't support it if they are up to that. The serious one among us, I don't think they are more than 10 or so. Even if this can be confirmed by this regulatory authority, that there are people they know they have been adding value to the companies and to the capital markets in general. They cannot be more than 10. All this one you are saying are the area boys, which some of our sisters even have been used in the past to come and win all the committee elections in the floor of AGM. These are some of the carnival of this month of the faith. They are now at the back. They only go and print a card and committee can be given to companies all this thing. So these are some of the things they are being called shadows, which I don't agree they up to 85% at the identified here yesterday. So that was one of the steps we took, so that we will not get to where we are. If that thing can be done about that, so that this can either impact on the investors and they are restore their confidence. When they are noticing one of the bottlenecks that people are complaining about, this 10% we told them that it's too much, they are paying on their dividends they want to receive. Number two, we talk about aggressive investors education. Sir, if you look at the roadmap, the Madam DG for SEC, she came out with when she first came in as the new Director General for this thing. It was a very wonderful package of this thing. One of the things I identified then was that they have a kind of zonal offices. And lo and behold, there is a particular one in the zone where I come from. I met with these guys. They have a wonderful programs that can be used presently and can also be used in the narrative. One of them, they call it formation of what we call capital market club in secondary schools. When it was launched in Ibadan, the state government, through the Ministry of Education, approved about 6 model schools in the state to serve as the starting something. Our group was one of the 4 groups that was invited from the zone to come and encourage these children so that they can have this kind of culture, equity culture can be developed into everything. But along the line, I begin to see that these people are not really performing from the zone again. What happened? There was a day we decided to take, to the office to ask for everything. They will say that there has not been much encouragement from the head office. So I believe these are some of the things which I believe need to be done. Because if they are need investors education, you need to consider the unique formation of this particular country via the zone. While you may go to, they have what I call the strategy and something in place where they can reach all the zone via their zonal offices. They can only do a partnership with the shareholders within different zones in the country, and they can organize investors education vis-a-vis the problem we have in this particular country. Let me point out one thing at this particular stage, sir. When we are having financial crisis, one of the things we did, that we were now increasing what we normally have what we call annual investor summit by our group. We decided to do it. We normally do it a general one, but in order to reach others, we believe it's too costly for our own size and in terms of financial costs, all these things. We wrote to the regulators saying, what can we do in terms of partnership, all these things, but there was no response. So we have to start that. It's one of the things that affected most of it, because there are something you let local investors know. These are the people who are sincerely people that we went to go and meet them in their various farms. I remember when banks were raising funds in those days, they partnered with most of these shareholders, which I agree with one of them. We went to the villages, nooks and crannies then of the country to convert for people to encourage to come and involve, developing equity culture, come and invest your little henny, and which they did. Now when the crisis was coming on, they need for us to have a form of educating them, because at the level, so they need for them to educate them. There is need for them, there was a person there, they need for them to shift their focus, whether from the financial sector, banks or all these things, to the diversity to other sector. Look at presently in the agricultural sector. If you look at the dividend payouts of a company like Ukomo this time around, and people in other sectors like in food and beverages, all these things, there are some so that they can still sustain our economy if there has been proper education for the investor. But one thing I observe about these people which were being encouraged to come to the market, they believe that 600 as I'm speaking. And I think, look at it, we represent minority investors. Some of them have just 1,000 units, some of them have about 200 units, all these things. of their distance. We now say that, come, let them, if you're able to advise this stakeholder, let them come together, let their DGP in that particular meeting, we now tell them the definition of what they are doing. By increasing the annual postal service audit, it was in the paper, the press knew this thing for this thing. There was no response from people who are supposed to take an actual decision, because it's not our own decision to go and call stakeholder, to go and call their post to order. Look at issue of dividend lodgement into the account. It took us a long time to be going to press to say that please call a stakeholders meeting. There's need for them to be taking these people's, dividend warrants into the savings account. It was another battle for a long time. Most of these issues have not really been addressed by now. And we are talking of near collapse or crisis in the capital market. When there are these fundamental issues, they may look so small, but if they are not addressed, they have a way of a long-term effect in discouraging the people. I remember the time we went to a faraway Igwembe local government in Edo, a border town to Delta State. Come and see people from the village, all these things, they come out sincerely to us. There was some that begin to give us calls. Oh God, now you ask us to come to buy all these shares. Come and see the money when they say they give to us. We don't accumulate them. So they now get to the banks in one of the nearest towns. They're not telling them to go and open the current. They say these things are where they open for help. Now allow for them all this. According to this particular rule. So these are some of the issues we are asking. If there's a stakeholder forum where we have been involved, well, we discovered that during the course of presentation that they have been stakeholder from is only the operators. The regulators are already been considering on to be having meeting with. You cannot believe it. Most of the activities of our regulators are only written on paper on the situation where I meet them one-on-one, maybe at the airport, anywhere. The next time you have this, why can't you carry us along to tell it to our members? These are one of the shortcomings we discover and really affect, as we believe from our own body, is one of the reasons that aggravate this particular situation we are in. And the only issue I mentioned, number 5, is the House Committee to read the issue of the delisted companies and three nationalized banks. Issue of three national banks has already been dealt with. Let me talk of the listed companies. Sir, there's a particular provision in KAMA that if a company wants to delist, there are ways you can get something, but there are a lot of porous, legal framework in our, in KAMA and in that can really address most of this because it's a free exit. I'll give you an instance. We have a member.
There is a provision in KAMA.
Yeah, I would drive to it says that there's a procedure for a company to get delisted. And there are 3 ways they can do it. It's either the minority buying over the stake. The majority buying over the stake of the minority. There can be a total dissolution of the company. Are you getting? There were 3. I forgot the third one. But what we were saying is this. In most of the meetings, when we call for an EGM, because we really argue this thing out on the floor of the EGMs when they want to release that. Sir, why do you need to take only the option of buying over the minority? Which is the capitalism at play? Why can't we go for total liquidation? Where you are going to sell the company and the assets. If you don't want to come to become a going concern, why should now, after you have take advantage of the shareholders, take our money when the company was in crisis, and you now go to the list when it's going on? Take the example of NBC. This is one of the things we had that problem that if we want to be protected, all these things, these are things that will allow us to go for, if by the time we go for one of the options of total dissolution, we have total liquidation of the company, none of the company will lie again to come and want to delist. Another thing we discovered that the people are going to give that. We have a member, he's a professional footballer in India. He wanted to bring in some money to come and invest in the capital based on our advice. If you discover the way he said you can take billions into their economy in India, but for you to take 1 naira out, it becomes a problem. Why our soul economy was so porous, where the people that don't bring in form of the so-called foreign investors and begin to have the capital flight in form of this coming under this particular business. Sir, we want you to look at this particular area and let this be tightened so that it can be a free exit, free entry and free exit, but that exit is not something that needs to be easily as porous as it is presently. under number 6, the regulatory authority to call capital market stakeholders to order. Sir, I will not give you another instance that's killing the capital market. There is this cabal. Let me use the word cabal, sir. They call them the registered insurance brokers. I will tell you how they operate. How do I know? I served in the audit committee of an insurance company. So there was a time they were talking about that the company has so much premium in their cards. But for it to back up, they say the stockbrokers, the insurance brokers are holding most of this thing. There's a situation where they serve as intermediary between the company and their, clients. They will not pay for the cover from the insurance company. This so-called registered insurance broker, they will now hold the money that belongs to insurance company for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They will not pay. If you look at most of the insurance companies, like one of the avenues where shareholders are able to get their dividends of this thing. But one of the problems we have is what we call the registered insurance brokers. If that particular issue is not addressed and they are being called to that. No, there was a time we wrote a petition on this particular issue as a body that there is need for NICOM to come with a legislation, because what you are calling her is just ordinary, is an addendum to existing law. If there's a loophole here and there, this is, we not say them. Come with a legislation via the instrument of the National Assembly, where it now become a crime for any registered insurance broker that can withhold what belongs to you, your check, for more than, your money for more than 1 or 2 years, or anything. Sir, I want you to investigate one thing, sir. Anytime you call up the insurance company, let them give you the people who are owing them, this guy, you discover that it amounts to more than 1,000 of them will be owing an insurance company, because we just put the figure 1 million and above for the company where I serve as a member of this committee. You will discover that these are one of the cabals that are killing investment in this particular company. The people in the insurance company yesterday when they were talking, because maybe they fear NICOM, they can withdraw that's the major problem we have in insurance. Number one problem we have about the insurance company in Nigeria. If that issue can be addressed, of this insurance broker holding the insurance money for more than necessary. So these are some of the issues we believe that if they really be addressed, we're going to have a better capital market where most of these things can be really be addressed. And then number 7, we talk about the need for to address legislation by the National Assembly to have some of the critical issues, like this issue I just mentioned. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, set up an ad hoc committee to meet on a quarterly basis to do some issues affecting the capital market and the way out. We discovered they already have that thing in place, but critical and some of the core stakeholders are not being carried along. You will not believe it. Like the organized shareholders group, with all the stake we have on this thing, there has never been a time, except 1 or 2 times, that these people call us for the meeting. But they need to have a kind of ad hoc committee where some of these issues that have been raised here can be raised on a quarterly basis, in order to monitor the activities of all the stakeholders in the capital market and the waiver. Thank you for this opportunity.
The area your shareholders invest, like, is it insurance companies, is it banks, is it the rail sector companies? But one trend we have noticed is that the insurance companies and commercial banks, most of their shares, the prices of their shares of these 2 sectors, insurance and banking sector, their shares, the prices of their shares has gone down by an average of 700% since the collapse, and they are completely about 92% in the negative territory. If you compare that with the rail sector, like manufacturing companies, their shares grew by about 67%. And today, none of them is actually in the negative territory compared to where they were in 2008. I do not know whether your shareholders have taken note of this. What do you think really accounts for this? Then two is, you said, you mentioned sensitive banking reforms. I do not know what your view is with regard to the present reforms that is being done. And what do you think of AMCON bailing out the banks? How does it, has AMCON come to your aid with regard to the people, investors, retail investors that lost their investment in the market? Thank you very much.
This is why I only focus on this, on insurance, where I can because I discovered that some of the people who are going to selling earlier on, they only focus on other areas. I didn't want to go to that to save time.
Okay, I will leave you at that. My colleagues will ask you other questions.
Well, first, I would like you to give us an overview of how banks then, the practice of accessing the markets, the capital market at your time. Two is, I don't know if you're familiar with Valentine Securities and Investment Limited. Valentine or Valentine Securities and Investment Limited. And when you went for public offer as of 2008. Okay. And it was one of the companies that allowed to buy some of your shares. And this is very relevant because it became an issue for FCMB, Central Bank, and SEC. As at the time, in 2011-2012, when Central Bank now took over, the management of the bank, and now FCMB acquired it. We want you to give us some clues as to what the relationship was between the bank and Value Line with regard to those shares. I think I'll ask more questions later.
I'd like to find out if, first and foremost, Mr. Ostu, I presume when you were the MD of Finbank, sorry, can you just move it? You were a shareholder, were you? Yes, very well. Okay. And now all the events that led to your removal and all of that, I'd like you to take this committee through events that led to that, to how you left office, events that, not you as a person, but corporately, what have chronicled everything that happened. Okay, why the CBN decided to take you out and circumstances leading up to that. And of course, the merger as it is today, to the best of your knowledge. That is where to start from. I'm building up the story, and I want us to start from that point. Thank you.
So while you are looking at the issue of Value Line, look at the case of other cases too. Otumba, Abu Ganiu, Kolawole, Theopoli Limited. Then secondly, I would like to know, at the time you were there, whether your bank engaged in margin lending, and to what extent this was so, and then what happened when the bubble burst. Thank you.
Finbank, exits, and then the merger of the FCMB. I want to take into cognizance the issue button on the margin goal. Can you, while doing that, let us know what component of that turned out to be non-performing? And can the issue still stand that the management had to deal with it because of the ratio was below what the industry allows? And if I may ask also, when taking up the issue of the latest margin, what's the liability component of Finbank as it margins or as it margin FCA? What is the situation? How much? Because SEC is on record objected to the bank based on the issue of how the liability was to be done. Can you address that particular segment of and I know it was not easy to shareholders, or rather, as the shareholder, I'm asking how pleased are you or how displeased are you with the latest merger into Finland with FCB? And if you're displeased, why? Thank you very much.
I represent Goja, the federal constituency in Cross River State. We would like to know, as the chairman had said earlier on, how the 25 billion recapitalization and yes, how did you raise the 25 billion recapitalization? And let us know whether it cash back at the time that you raised this money.
Former MD, you are aware that your former I want to ask if you have been following the process leading to the acquisition. Are you satisfied that the process leading to the acquisition of that land have been properly followed by both the SEC, the CBN, and FCN? I represent the Gujarat Federal Constituency. And you were there in 2009, you said. And so in 2008, you had a topic of marriage. We are aware that there are a lot of complaints. Why do we have such complaints sometimes?
To address each one of them, I tried to note them down. They were being asked. The first one on overview of how banks access the capital market at that time. The basic thing that is there is that if a company determines, a bank determines the need for additional look at all the processes and procedures that are there, and you follow them, you apply to both the SEC and the stock exchange to increase your share capital, and then you do the process, look at your accounts, and then decide how you want to go about it. You decide to do by way of public offer, or you want to raise venture or whatever you apply that. And that those procedures are what most of the banks are wanting to market that follow. And I believe if you are not able to meet the requirements that are set up there, you will not be able to access the market. On recognized securities and investment business, I am aware that the investors in the shares of the bank, and I don't have the details now of what happened subsequently, but I know that the medical company, I believe it didn't come to my attention because I think I must have left by the time they made that complaint. And
that's on 129 Securities,
but it was
2008.
Yes, 2008.
Yes.
That was the time we went to the market. Their complaint was in 2008.
Yes. It was 2008, yes.
Sorry, remind me of the company.
Okay, the company is. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bank PLC letter dated January 10, 2012 and CBN letter dated December 22, 2011 forwarding Finbank PLC and FCMB responses to issues raised in our letter to CBN dated October 18, 2011. We hereby respond that is set right to your update on issues as follows. Value Line Securities and Investment Limited. issue in contention, failure to refund 2.5 billion for unallotted shares, and these shares were done in 2008. In response to our letter dated July 7, 2011, directing you to refund the same amount plus the accrued interest to Value Line Securities Investment Limited, you stated in your letter dated July 19, 2011 that, contrary to Value Line's narration, we stated that Value Line did not deposit the stated sum for the purpose of subscribing to the bank's 2008 public offer. Rather, Value Line deposited the stated sum with the bank for the purpose of purchasing the bank's non-IPO shares. Our internal investigation revealed that Value Line had been involved in the sale and purchase of bank's non-IPO shares to the benefit of Value Line with no complaint by Value Line in the past. Then, the paraphrase. Then the said down, we do not understand the non-IPO shares that your bank engaged Value Line in buying. How are these non-IPO shares created? What we recognize and approve in the course of our regulatory function in the acquisition of shares in a public entity is by subscribing to an IPO or purchase in the secondary market through the non-Nigerian stock exchange. So the question is there huge liabilities of FinBank is the direct result of the 2008 public offer, a failure to allot shares to subscribers running into several billions of naira. And you were at the MD at the time, and this is an issue that has arisen because it is refusal of FinBank to allot shares to the Value Line. And so I think you are in the picture now. Thank you.
Right. Is that the shares, the conflict of Value Line probably is not on the IPO, the offer, in 2008 offer that was made. That is the reason why the bank responded that way. The bank's shares are already publicly traded. So people could have bought the shares of the bank before the new offer. Do you understand what I mean? From what you have explained. So if Value Line has been buying and selling the shares of the bank before the offer, and they also subscribe to the offer, those are two different things. So the issue now will be to determine whether the 2.5 billion that is being referred to was a subscription for the new offer, or it was a trading, because they are a capital market of people, and our shares are trading. Everybody that requested or subscribed for shares got their shares. If people come back at the end of the day, because by the time we did our allotment in 2008, the market has been coming down, and then if people now come back and say they did not subscribe or they did not get an allotment, it's a different thing. It's something that needs to be.
Mr. Okay, I want to remind you that you are under offer.
My knowledge and my recollection, the Value Line matter, based on the investigation that those people had, they have privilege of having looked through the documents and everything. I don't have that privilege. But all the directives that we have given, the processes that we have followed, we have to ensure all that. And if there are people who have conflicts now, we had a way of dealing with those conflicts. And we dealt with several of them, because there were delays before our offer was allotted at the end of the day. So within that time, a lot of things happened, and that was why we had a lot of conflicts. And by the time we started dealing with those conflicts, we were able to resolve most of them.
In the letter from SEC, you will find that your bank later accepted that this man had paid his money for the 2008 public offering in your bank, but that the money belonged to Oceanic Bank, not the Value Line. And the question is, you don't know about these details?
No, I don't have these details.
Okay, do I read the letter from SEC to your bank?
When was the letter was?
Which is why you were there. But this action took place when you were the MD.
Yes.
So you cannot feign ignorance of what you did. Because this thing, you were the MD, and a transaction worth 2.5 billion naira at that time could not have been done by your bank without your knowledge. It's not possible. And then if you go through this letter from SEC, there are so many such cases. And so you couldn't have been the MD and you didn't know about all these things. Even when the people were complaining to your bank before then going to SEC. So you, like the chairman told you, you are on oath. And you cannot say you did not know about this transaction. To the extent you now try to tell Value Line the money was not yours, it was Oceanic Bank money. So we want to understand what transpired, because the other man that was here, the so-called Proactive Shareholders Association, I tried to ask this question. Why is it that shares of other companies who are of the real sector are going up? The share prices are going up, while only banks and insurance shares are coming down every day. Because we are talking about
what I said is that my position is that in respect of that amount, he did not apply for IPO. If I look at the documents, I have a privilege of looking, because most of these issues escalated when I left. Because if I was there, I'm sure he wouldn't be making those complaints just like that, because the documentations were there. So I'm sure the bank had the documentation, so they should have provided it to whoever is looking at it. If we have complaints in respect of what I said, I know that this thing here, what happened was a lot of people refused to take the shares because the market had crashed. And then they come up with all sorts of things. So in this case, because of my limited access to information, I don't have access to all the things that we're now talking about. I'm not getting the things for the first time. The position I still remember is that the of those shares that is containing of now, it wasn't an IPO application. The removal, it is, public knowledge that the central bank undertook a stress test. And after the stress test, they came up with the tests were concluded. The reports had not been sent to the banks. For me, I haven't received any report. And the bankers committee was called, and then a number of us were doing letters to say we are no longer, that will be removed by the central bank. And the reasons were stated in the letter. A week or so later, we saw the report of the stress test. And it happened that a number of provisions have been made. When these tests are going on, a number of these provisions were proposed, and then we gave information on the reasons why they are not or they should not be. Some of them in the field of just agreed that they were not to provide. But when it went back to us, I came back because they insisted that they have to raise responsibility. And in our own case, a number of provisions that were not they were not supposed to be provisions were made.
For instance,
for example, there is a placement of about 38 million that we made to other banks, which the various placements the documentations were there, and the central bank could not confirm those placements with the other banks. They claimed that they couldn't confirm them, and on that basis, they were going to make a full provision. And
sorry, Mr. Motion. Shortly. One, did you have documents to back that up? Do that, yes. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Were you in the position to show that to CBN? That's number one. Number two, stress test is like somebody conducting an examination. Do you agree with the parameters, the indices that define what they call stress test, what CBN referred to as stress test? Do you agree with indices, with the parameters that constitute the stress test? And then what do you think was the place of your bank before the stress test was conducted?
I haven't finished the issue of the case because they were there, the information was there. Letters were written by the respective banks confirming the reports and everything. They refused to accept them and they say that they can confirm them. But subsequently, they were confirmed. But then it was after the fact. But on the stress test, the parameters, I cannot remember now whether there was a set of parameters that were agreed or on the stress test. I can't remember. But basically, it's the reasons why most of these things happened was the arbitrary nature of the provision in my office that now show, without giving an opportunity to say, look, this is the position of that with the provisions of, say, 80 billion or 100 billion, your capital has reduced to 11 billion, and your liquidity ratio is 20% or whatever, and you are then expected to respond and all that, but there was no such opportunity. And those are to in brief, what I can say that the second one to that. On October, I was leaving and then I'm more than I honestly cannot remember anything on this. I don't have any collection of this one at all. Whether we did margin lending and what happened, well, the level of lending did in terms of capital markets to operators was not significant, but we had a sharp smooth facility that we had as a product, which customers access. We borrowed from the many contribution, added from certificates from the and they bought shares from the market.
Just a second.
That recognized such practice, where banks gave loans for, they had to give loans for purchase of shares, and then people contribute, and then they now get. And considering the fact that the capital market is meant for long-term capital, do you think it was prudent for a money market where, for instance, in our culture, where you put in money today, tomorrow you expect, some kind of this thing, which was the reason people were going into the market. You go to the next week, you harvest a lot of money, and the capital market was booming. Do you think it was prudent on
part of the bank to be doing that? And what did Nigeria Stock Exchange, what did this management, what were their views, and SEC, what were their views at the time with regard to this issue? Thank you.
When this was going on, what rules were you playing by? And who are those that provide those the rules? Because one was saying that for such dealings or practice in the bank with share and stockbrokers and the like, we should have a guiding principle or we should play by the rules. I don't know which rules should apply and who provided those rules. Thank you.
With benefit of hindsight. The practice of borrowing against your existing strategy is acceptable everywhere in the world. And even when these things were happening, internationally, a lot of people feel caution to the new. And it's so many things. I talked about the housing bubble that was. Mortgage lending, people have to make contributions. At the time in the United States, you don't have to make contribution to buy a house. They tell you to buy a house because they saw that the prices were all appreciated. You buy a house today, in the next 6 months,
your bank is white for 35 years. And I believe that you are abreast very well with what is happening in the market. I want to just to give you a basis to give us an overview of actually because what you have listed, just 3 items, they are fairly skeletal. And I would want, maybe using your company, your bank as an example, give us an illustration of why we have that kind of situation. If you look at your bank, First City Monument Bank PLC, as of 2005, you were the share price as of January 5, 2005 was 5 naira 8 kobo. Then in March 5, 2008, your share price was 19 naira 99 kobo. In January 30, 2012, your share price is around 4 naira. As of 2008 compared to today is in negative territory. As of 2005 compared to today is in negative territory. I want you to compare this with Nigerian breweries. As of January 5, 2005, Nigerian breweries price was 41 naira 81 kobo. March 2008, Nigerian breweries was 55 naira 2 kobo. January 30, 2012, Nigerian breweries is 92 naira 8 kobo. And you are trading in the same market. Why this disparity? What were they doing that they didn't enjoy that, the geometric rise that your share enjoyed in 2008? Why have they been steady? And why is your own going both in 2008 and 2005 in negative territory? Thank you.
Two very different sectors. The breweries, if you look at the brewery sector, Nigerian breweries probably enjoys about very dominant market share and subsequently very high margins in its own part of the industry. That is reflected in the financial performance of Nigerian breweries over the years. On the other hand, banking is a volatile sector and it is a highly competitive sector where you have at least about 20 banks as of today, and at the time in 2005 that you referred to, we had 25 banks. So the intense competition in the banking industry has certainly led to a lot more volatile financial performance, and share price is partially a reflection of the financial performance. In the case of FCMB, it is publicly reported that we declared a loss in the year ended December 2011, and clearly when you do have a loss, your share price will suffer as a result. The loss came about largely because of provisions that were made on loans that have become non-performing in spite of various attempts at restructuring to try and get them to be performing, some of which were sold to AMCOM, some of which we were not able to sell to AMCOM because collateral had either fully depleted or was not available. So the decline or the low point of the share price is really the outcome of that loss that was announced, about a month ago. Well, we're pleased to say that certainly since the course of this year we've been seeing a fairly strong rebound with very high quality and healthy earnings. Now, the peak of our share price, which was, as you mentioned, 19 naira and 99 kobo, was, in my view, a function of a number of things. banks or bank shares were subject to more speculation than probably any other sector. Bank shares were subject to probably more margin lending than any other sector. And bank shares were also the ones that were most liquid and actively traded than any other sector. And therefore, a lot of the people who were looking for large speculative bets on shares, you couldn't find 2-3 billion naira of Nigerian brewery shares just to buy just like that. But because banks were issuing new shares at the time, a lot of people were able to buy heavily those bank shares. And when it came to, unfortunately, selling, they also sold very heavily. Now, at the time, I think, of the peak of our share price, we have recently declared a profit that was about, I think, about 14 or 15 billion naira profit after tax. And when we look at that earnings performance relative to the share price, it was linked to the fundamental and the future prospects that people saw, because people felt banks were growing at a very fast pace. I think we certainly benefited from the speculative activity on other banks, so they will compare you with other banks and they'll say, in the case of local investors, if a peer bank to FCMB is trading at 19, then FCMB too must trade at 19, so people will buy your shares till the share price reaches that. And in the case of international investors, they would typically look at certain ratios, which they'll use to calculate what the valuation of the shares should be against compared to peer banks. So I think there are a multitude of factors going on which led to the rise of the share price. But at that time, it was really driven by banks being subject to the highest level of speculative investing that wasn't being done at that time. And FCMB really just being in that sector was a victim of that speculation on the shares.
To manipulate, but to guide your shares. You were fairly advantaged because you have somebody, you here providing the funds, somebody is on the floor of the exchange, handling the shares. Where in the world would you see this trend? And where, considering your exposure as MD since 2006, and considering the way you speak to, you would have been the anglicized. You are exposed to other jurisdictions. Have you ever witnessed this trend elsewhere? And please enlighten us on the issue of pump and dump. Thank you.
Exactly. But in terms of the notion or concept of banks or any other company buying or trading its own shares or speculating its own shares, personally, in my own career, I did not work when I was abroad in capital markets per se. I did not really follow capital markets. So I was more in something they call debt. I was doing debt, investment banking outside of Nigeria. So I personally have not tracked it. I don't think any company in the West would admit to manipulating its shares. So there's no way I can sit here and start pointing fingers and say people do or do not do that, whether locally or internationally.
Behind the collapse of the stock market are as follows, and the very first one is weak corporate governance. You can't leave such an important issue as a one-liner. It is actually at the bottom, the basis of what we're trying to do, among many others. We have to critically look at what you consider weak corporate governance in order to ensure that we strengthen it. The institutions must be strengthened to be able to deal with it so that we don't get back into this mess. That's number one. Number two, you heard Mr. Owusu a while back, and I pointedly asked him, is he happy today? He was a shareholder in Finbank, and now is saying his bank gone through cyclic episodes. Today, Mr. Owusu, take him as an example, alongside many others. What would you be telling them as the guys who acquired them? That's number one. Number two, what's their fate? now that your bank has taken over what used to be FinBank? Thank you very much. Number one, that the bank has taken over the bank without absolute consideration for the fact that he used to be a shareholder in FinBank. Okay, he said that. And there are more people like that in the people university, not of us, who would like to have the work, so that we can use that to drive investor confidence. That's what we have to use that to drive investor confidence. Now that you are the property rights, you have to share on this show. Thank you very much.
I'm listening to one of my because these notes prepared a fairly short notice. Now, on the issue of corporate governance, many people have been making a lot of changes to corporate governance codes, from the SEC to the central bank, and others as well, I'm sure. So in my view, many of the changes already being made are addressing the issues that arose. The fact is that you had situations where boards were not fully on top of what their companies were doing, and in some cases turned a blind eye. I think that was largely because maybe you had seen a situation for many years where there hadn't been many changes, whether it be on the board or in management, so people got very comfortable. I think after several years when that happens, you're likely to see people letting down their guard, and management can get away with a lot more than it normally should. And broadly speaking, I think the reforms that are being embarked upon by the regulators are tackling or attempting to tackle a lot of these. They have identified the root cause, and particularly banks, I would say, and they have taken their measures to try to address that. Whether those be the right or wrong measures, I think only time will tell, but certainly they have made attempts to address that.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
And he alleged that, well, he didn't have the benefit of time, maybe. He spoke to the fact that he had 38 billion naira placements in other banks that were verified, yet CBN practically railroaded and took the bank, and kept on saying forcibly, took the bank from him. If we're going to talk about corporate governance, let us isolate CBN alongside other entities in the financial market, and then situate that in the context of how FinBank eventually got acquired by your bank. I want us to point out to these issues, I want to speak to these issues of what has happened or what had happened in the process.
I think the facts are very publicly known in terms of the steps that were taken by the central bank, and whether people feel those are the right or wrong steps, I think is either they entitled by law to do it. I'm not a lawyer, and I have not tried to analyze whether they were legally entitled to do so. So I have just focused on trying to protect my shareholders and my investors, which is my job. My personal views, I don't think, is why I'm here. I'm here in my capacity as the MD, so it would be inappropriate for me to start giving an opinion as to whether the central bank actions vis-à-vis FinBank or any other bank were right or wrong. And if you're asking me whether they were lawful, I would request or humbly request that you possibly direct that to those who have better knowledge of the laws than I do, because frankly, I don't. So I can't really provide.
Why I said that? To choose the kind of questions you want to ask, particularly the ones that fall directly under your purview. You spoke to this paper and alleged that corporate governance is also one of the reasons why we're here today. And there must have been reasons why you think we need to strengthen corporate governance. You didn't need to be a lawyer to say corporate governance was an issue. If you recognized it as MD, FCMB, you would think that it would also be right to have opposite of it, strong corporate governance, which you said it was weak, one of the reasons why you failed. And then we said it must come up and it must be strong. So tell us why. and then ultimately the interest of the life.
Actually, you must be aware of these issues with which we addressed Mr. Okemosu, and this is on a letter written on 1st February 2012 on why the film ban, that there are a lot of issues relating to film ban, a lot of liabilities outstanding, people, shares that were unallotted, a lot of issues surrounding film ban that would ordinarily make it impossible or difficult for your bank to acquire film ban. And I'm sure, there wouldn't be any way you wouldn't have been made aware of these facts, because they were writing to film bank, they were writing to central bank and all this, and these were issues. So the liabilities with regard to value line, securities and investment, and this is related to corporate governance, because due diligence and all these things, they are very distinct. Otumba Abdul, the value line is 2.5 billion. Then Otumba Abdul Ganiyu is 92 million. Then T-Dog is 142 million. Then Springboard is APT Securities 39 million. Then Chibodua Y Lawrence is 3.8 billion. And IMB Energy Master Fund 60 million. Then Enang Eta Solomon. Then a host of other liabilities. And this is 1st of February 2012. Shortly before suddenly the CBN or I don't know whether SEC reversed this up, because their duty is to protect shareholders. And without giving approval, it would have been impossible for you to acquire, no matter the approval given to CBN, it would have been impossible without SEC for you to acquire film ban. And these issues were then resolved. And to what extent were they resolved?
Address the issues that people was raising. We know where to direct those issues to. I think for the purposes of our exercise, it will suffice if we know who sanctioned the acquisition of film ban by FCMB, one. And then secondly, whether all the outstanding liabilities of film ban has been settled. So once we have that information from you, we will know where to direct all other appropriate queries in the course of this exercise. Thank you, Chairman.
Final comment on corporate governance to respect the follow-on question from the Honorable from the as far as we're concerned, when I talked about corporate governance, and it was in a broad sense, I didn't specify any particular institution. But broadly speaking, it is very clear that the board is there to help keep, provide oversight to make sure that banks do not take excessive risk. And by the losses that were recorded by banks following the exercise that was done, whether it be special audit or anything that happened thereafter, it is clear that many banks did take excessive risk in a bid to try to what I would describe as meet the yearnings of shareholders, because they wanted to deliver good profits to their shareholders. So really my citing of corporate governance is really as far as there was a broad, I would say, failure by boards to be on top of the risks that their organizations were taking. Whether it was ignorance or negligence or anything else, again,
is not for one to say. But clearly, banks took risks, boards were not on top of those risks, and consequently banks made losses. In some cases, those losses led to them becoming insolvent and actions having to be taken by the central bank. Those are the facts. Now, the questions that were asked about FinBank and Value Line, I would request and others, I think one of you also asked about, I think it was all the different issues of the sanctions, our acquisition, and so on and so forth. So I'll ask my Senior Vice President, Patrick Yamamoto, who is in charge of strategy and M&A in FCMB, to answer those questions.
I, Patrick Yamamoto, do solemnly swear that the evidence I shall give, before this committee, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And it's in FCMB's acquisition of FinBank. I think the point we'd like to stress around that is it would have been impossible for an acquisition to take place if the shareholders of FinBank did not vote overwhelmingly for FCMB's acquisition of FinBank. And to put figures to that, at the court-ordered meeting of FinBank, where FinBank shareholders voted to determine or to accept or approve of FCMB's acquisition of FinBank, the votes of those present and voting were 86% in favor. In other words, the shareholders of FinBank overwhelmingly approved of FCMB's acquisition of FinBank. The question was also asked about the due process followed in terms of FCMB's acquisition of FinBank. And so, if you bear with me, I can just take us through the process steps that guided this process over a period of about 1 to 1.5 years. And from my part, the best practices. It all started with the request of an expression of interest by potential acquirers of FinBank. The goal then being to find an acquirer who will take over FinBank and capitalize the entity as necessary, because at that point in time, FinBank had going concern issues, and a key option led to the regulator at that point in time was potential liquidation of the bank. And so the entry of a potential investor in FinBank was one way out to rescue the bank as opposed to liquidation. FCMB, among other potential bidders, did express interest in acquiring FinBank. The interest was noted by the board of FinBank, and a follow-on to that in the form of a non-binding expression of interest was requested of FCMB. FCMB, and part of the requirement of the non-binding expression of interest included making a strong case of FCMB as being a suitable acquirer of FinBank, and also articulating some of the things FCMB will do to ensure that FinBank remains a going concern. FCMB responded to that, and following the response, the board of FinBank acknowledged and considered FCMB for the next stage in the process, at which point FCMB put forward a binding offer for the acquisition of FinBank. Following the binding offer for the acquisition of FinBank, FCMB was again selected as a very credible acquired a FinBank, and thereafter, a memorandum of understanding was executed between FCMB and FinBank, which followed the transaction implementation agreement that detailed out the terms of the potential acquisition of FinBank by FCMB. So, what am I trying to say at this point in time? This was essentially a process that took place over a period of time involving the engagement of both entities and the credibility of FCMB being consistently being assessed, evaluated, and benchmarked against other offers that FinBank does. In terms of approval, eventual approval of this transaction, like I mentioned, the shareholders of FinBank approved of this transaction, and 86% vote in favor in terms of those present and voting. For us to have consummated the acquisition, there was a court-ordered meeting that facilitated that shareholder exercise, and so in other words, the Federal High Court of the country were involved. The scheme coming out of the shareholder meeting was sanctioned by the Federal High Court of Nigeria, implying that there was an additional layer of legal support of the credibility of the proposal and the process we went through. Furthermore, we got the various regulatory approvals for this transaction that involved the CBN, the SEC, and the CAC, based on the instruments that were required for this transaction. So essentially, to acquire FinBank, we met shareholder approval requirements, we met the requirements of the cost of the land, we met the requirements of the regulators of the land, and as I speak, consideration has been dispatched to those that opted for cash in form of cash, and for those that opted for FCMB shares as consideration for FCMB acquisition of FinBank. Okay. Consideration for FinBank came to 6 billion, with the shareholders reserving the option to collect cash or shares and for shares. From the time in 2009 when the former management existed, possibly existed through CBN, and the time you acquired FinBank, can you give us the total injection, the financial injection, the total fund that was injected by the central bank to FinBank prior to the acquisition? If I recollect correctly, the central bank injected about 50 billion, which has been paid back.
Thank you very much, Vice President. No, I'm sorry. Said to the process at any point in time.
For transaction until we met on certain ground.
Okay, you can go ahead. The correspondence or something like that, because we have right here something that says no.
You can to ensure acquisition is complete. The various regulators, the shareholders, the key stakeholders will all approve of the transaction. And like I was trying to stress and I mentioned earlier, as is usual with this process, the various participating entities, the various stakeholders will always seek to ensure that their needs are satisfied to their comfort before granting approval. And so at every stage of the transaction, we had this interaction with the various parties.
Now, in answering this question, section 118 of the SEC, every merger, acquisition, or business combination between or among companies shall, that's the operative word, be subject to the prior review and approval of the Commission. That outfit the power to do anything, notwithstanding the provision of any other power on issues of acquisition and matters. So let us advance this. And from that, the document that I have in my hand, it will be unfair to the investing public and a failure on the part of the SEC in its investor protection function to sweep under the carpet these outstanding payments and allow the merger without having these issues addressed and settled. This stubborn person this year. Now, at what point were these issues? And we have evidence that these issues have been settled before you have acquired the money.
There's a comment I would like to respond to and the question asked in terms of these outstanding issues. In terms of SEC being the final approval authority for mergers and acquisitions, I would like to assure the House that the only way the acquisition can be complete is we have SEC approval, and we do have SEC approval of the acquisition.
And when did you finally finish the process of acquisition?
And then two, foreign invested all the pending issues with SEC. If I recall correctly, you mentioned that there were 34 pending cases against Inbank, which could have potentially limited our ability to do the acquisition. Here's what I can say about the current status of the cases against Inbank, channeled through SEC as of today. There are only 6 outstanding cases, as confirmed to us by SEC through correspondence subsequent to what I believe you have started.
Take a look at that. It's from SEC.
Yes, sir.
It's more than that.
I think
even more than that.
today there are just 6 pending cases from SEC. Of the 6, 4 of them have been addressed, and we have just been asked to explain the basis or provide proof of that. One more, we have confirmed to the Commission that we are looking to address in the form of payment, but the amount that needs to be paid cannot be paid through checks. You need to do transfer for that. And the customer in question has specifically refused to furnish the account details. And we have requested the Commission to kindly get the account details on our behalf to make payments. By the way, most of the other cases we spoke about, in settling those cases, what was done was to actually issue checks, pass on the checks to the Commission, and requested the Commission to please distribute the checks on our behalf, so that there is no ambiguity about whether settlement has indeed taken place for most of those cases.
Before or after acquisition? After.
Do all these settlements. Were they done before or after you acquire payment? Some of these payments happen after we have acquired payment. And so as we speak now, there is really one outstanding case, if you assume the SEC is in agreement, provides the name, the account number, the commissioner provides the account number for that example I gave, and the commission is satisfied with the explanation for the other 4 names. So as we speak right now, there is only one transaction that we feel needs to be fully vetted. And for a bank that's a going concern, that has participated actively in the capital market in the form of fundraising, to have just one outstanding, to have reduced the list of issues to this low, I think this is, if I'm to speak to that, I think this is commendable.
Because having done the acquisition in spite of these objections, would ordinarily have put the people who raised the objections to disadvantage, because in any case, you had already acquired it. And whether you like it or not, this is what I have, I put it on the table, you like it or you don't like it, you take it. So, but, what's the hurry? What was the reason for the hurry between first they raised these objections and by night you had already acquired the bank? Within what time did they get these issues cleared? When did they contact the people involved? Thank you.
Not having received regulatory approval, if there were doubts about the credibility and the sense of responsibility of FCMB as a corporate entity acquiring Finland. That's one. 2, a number of these issues were really issues between Finland and some shareholders. And part of the assurances we gave was that as FCMB, we will act responsibly in trying to clear up all these, any or all these outstanding issues. 3, indeed, some of the issues that were addressed, you could actually, it was the Finland's viewpoint was that they didn't have, there was no outstanding liability towards these investors. But in view of our support of the whole process, in view of trying to ensure that all these matters were vetted and got vetted quickly, the decision was made to just, vet these things and let's move on. And so again, as I speak, there is just one key outstanding SEC-related transaction that requires particular focus on. And in that particular transaction, we have engaged SEC to review that case and elicit its position in view of all the additional information that is now available. The particular case in question is Value Line Securities. Value Line Securities investment in the so that time of impact, we saw this value. We are aware 2.5 billion. What you have is different from what the SEC has, it's different from what CBN has. How do you intend to regularize all this? I think the point you raised has to do with the difference between SEC's position on share capital versus what is in the financial statements. And the question is, if I understand correctly, how as an institution we will fix this. I'd like to say a lot of work is already in process, and I'll give a quick background to what happened. I think apparently after the 2003 offer, upon the CBN's approval of the funds that came, the bank went on to the bank went on to capitalize on that basis. The reality is that technically, sex position should be the final, should be the real basis of capitalization. When SEC did approve, there was a difference between what SEC approval and CBN approval, necessitating that the necessitating that money be refunded to customers. That difference is about 491 million shares, translating to about 4.6 billion in value. Steps have been made to address the situation. The approval of the board of FinBank is in place, authorizing, because it's not just reverse out of share capital, it's a very sensitive thing, authorizing the reversal of the financial statements to reflect the correct position. But in the meantime, and further to this, the CBN has approved that reversal as necessary. Again, I must stress 2 points. This is a financial statement entry. In other words, we're talking about the audited financial books. It doesn't affect the register of members, because the register of members, which is really the authentic representation of shareholders of the bank, agrees with what SEC's position is. Entries have been passed so far to correctly state this, and the 2011 audited financials will reflect that. In the meantime, 4.4 billion has been paid back in respect of all the return money that is paid back. So what am I saying in summary? A mistake was made in the past in booking entries based on approvals received. Board approval and CBN approval are in place for the correcting entries to be posted. Those entries have been posted. The 2011 audited financials will reflect the correct situation. In the meantime, and this is extremely important to note, the register of members was correct and reflects SEC's position.
Now, you know, we are dealing, the entire capital market is all about confidence. Now, what are you doing to make the shareholders understand the processes that led to these mistakes, and that they were genuine mistakes, and that such a thing will not happen again?
Basically asking what do we do to assure shareholders that the mistakes made by FinBank will not happen again. The fact is that now that there's new ownership, a new board, and it's part of FCMB, when those shareholders look at the track record of FCMB, we've never had any such issues. In fact, we don't have any infractions relating to shareholder matters with SEC, to the best of my knowledge. And therefore, we would hope that the shareholders will be able to look to the standards that FCMB has tried to maintain in terms of shareholder matters.
And in your own estimation, you don't think there's anybody out there from FinBank who used to be a shareholder of FinBank who is satisfied with the process?
Thank you, sir. Just to sure understand the question really is, do we think that all shareholders of FinBank are happy with the whole process?
They've gotten the way they've been treated at the end of the day, equitability of what what you've done out. 4.4 billion naira given out for their stake in former stake in Finbank, have they been equitably addressed now, and they feel that okay, everything is fine, no hands-offs or anything?
I think a couple of things the shareholders of Finbank feel at the moment. I think a couple of things come together really. Banks were declared distressed. If the previous president of the CBN is anything to go by, those with that level of capital inadequacy, the bank would have been liquidated. The implication is that shareholders have gotten nothing. What I think the CBN has gone on to do is to provide a process that takes the banks to safe harbor while still allowing the investors rescue some of the initial investments instead of losing everything. So if you look at it from that viewpoint, then one is could say that shareholders are happy about the eventual outcome that 6 billion was gotten. Now, if you look at it from the viewpoint of I invested this much and I got this little, every investor knows you're taking a risk. You might make returns or you might lose money, but it's kind of difficult to accept to lose so much. So from that viewpoint, it might not be one to say they are not perfectly happy with the final outcome. However, if I'm to use the actual votes by Finbank shareholders as a proxy for their approval of the process, then I would have to say it points towards that they are look favorable as the outcome. Again, like I mentioned earlier, 86% of Finbank shareholders present and voting at the court order meeting voted in favor of this process.
Both of you are here in this church would not have fitted.
UBA capital market.
Do solemnly affirm. Do solemnly affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Before this committee.
Before this committee.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God. Existing protocols. Before I start to read from my prepared text, I just want to say in 1 minute who a registrar is in the capital market. And this is to let us have a kind of background to what we do as registrars in the capital market. A registrar is a person who keeps a record, an official recorder, an agent of either a bank, a trust company, or other corporations, especially quoted and unquoted companies, who is responsible for certifying and registering issues of securities. We operate both in the secondary and the primary market. Primary market as collectors and imputer, I may use that word, of public offering documents. When a company goes to the public, the documents are collected from different participants in the market, the issuing houses, the stockbroking firms, and even the issuer themselves. And these
documents, which we call subscription forms, are sent to the registrars to capture the information or the data therein, with a view to coming up at the end of the offer data to support who and who has applied, what they applied for, their names, their addresses, and some other information that are in the application forms. And after the offer has been concluded, this information collated are sent to the regional seats, who later pass them to the SEC for what we call allotment approval. Thereafter, after the approval, these same documents are sent back to us based on the approval of SEC for the registrars to now generate a register of shareholders, issue certificates, dispatch the certificates, and if there are issues of oversubscription, we receive the money to pay back to the respective subscribers who have whose money has been returned. And of course, in the secondary market, we also act for the issuers or the companies that are quoted on the stock exchange by keeping the register of members, administering them, paying dividends as when they are declared, sending out annual reports and some other documents from time to time as may be directed by our principals, who are the quoted companies on the stock exchange. I also want to say that all registrars as of today in the capital market are registered and licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, who is our primary regulatory authority. Preamble. The net product of the capital market from the first quarter of 2008 caught all stakeholders unprepared, not unaware, because most we've been seeing some pointers from other jurisdictions to the problem in the capital market or the global financial meltdown. But I think we were prepared, and along with that, I also talk of the fact that we are also in denial, especially from the regulatory authorities. Since then, the market is yet to fully rebound or recover in line with the forecast of market analysts. Of course, there are other jurisdictions who also have similar problems. Most of them are almost recovered or are fully recovered. What are the causes of the crisis? I list them here, and I will, if need be, expatiate on some of them as I go ahead. The number one point I put here is that the fact that Nigeria cannot be insulated from the global financial meltdown, which has its roots in the United States subprime or mortgage market. Of course, most foreign institutional investors or fund managers who brought their funds in Nigeria to invest in the market had foresight, what I call foresight, or had better information, and they quickly fell down to go back to their own countries to defend the crisis there. And of course, like one of the people that said, when everybody is trying to dump at the same time, of course, the supply will outstretch or will be more than the demand. And in the process, of course, there was a crashing of prices, which we are still battling with. Number two, I talk of the failure of financial regulators to properly monitor our dimension and adapt to new realities in the market, and the attendant delay in quickly effective corrective measures. Somebody had asked before, were there no regulations? There were. But some of the regulations at times became almost obsolete with the realities of the time, but there was no quick response to enacting the ones that we actually arrest the situation. The issue of margin facilities, somebody had raised that before. Unfortunately, there were no very good regulations in place for margin facilities. But subsequent to the collapse, there is a document now or a regulation now in place put together by the capital market community, of course spearheaded by SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. We were severally fed with what I would call false claims of our banking industry being insulated from the crisis by CBN as it were then. Because when people were talking of global meltdown, we were told then that we are insulated, that the 25 billion Naira shareholders fund as a symptom from any crisis. But all of us have seen what happened thereafter when actually not insulated. My point number 3, the upward movement of the prices of stocks on the stock exchange, in the secondary market in particular, which were not supported by actual financial performance or indices or fundamentals, also led to the collapse in the capital market. One of the honorable members was alluding to the prices of FCMB and Nigerian breweries over a period of 5 years. And I want to say that some of the stocks actually, yes, we talk of issue of deregulation, issue of forces of supply and demand. But I believe in an economy like Nigeria, it is good to leave the markets to. It is good to say we are deregulated, but we cannot totally leave the market to the forces of supply and demand, because there are some inherent issues that arose from there. Because I would say, I don't want to use the word manipulation, but because of force of demand and supply, a lot of stocks were overpriced over time. And after this overpricing, the next thing you see is such companies coming to the market to come and raise funds, albeit at what they call discounted rate. But if a price was, if the company was 1 naira in January, by July, the share price goes to about 6 naira, and you come to sell to the foreign market at 5 naira. Of course, it's at a discounted rate. But then, what were the fundamentals that supported the rise in price over the 6 months? And I want to say, yes, sir, that the issue is not just banks and insurance alone. It cuts across all sectors of the economy. There are some companies that never did AGM for years, yet their prices rose. And eventually they came to the market to raise funds. So it's not just the banks and the insurance companies. Other companies are also there. And the issue of pricing, you talk about the Nigerian being a particular amount at this point in time, but what I know about pricing is that it goes up and it comes down from time to time. If you want to really get the average, we need to go not just using 2005, 2008, and 2012. We need to look at all the years within the period 2005 and see how the movements are. Because even in Nigerian breweries of this world too, they also came down, but because of their own kind of market, they are going back. They're going up north instead of just coming down south perpetually. The next point, poor understanding of the market dynamics by investors who came to believe that the market will remain bullish perpetually. They failed to realize that what goes up will come down, the law of gravity. And of course, they also believe that the capital market is just like the money market, which is a short-term market, not realizing the fact that the capital market is a market for long-term investments, and that you don't just go to the market in one day and come back the following day with 100% return. And that was what we were seeing. That was what we were fed with. That was what we believed. A lot of uninformed investors. And through that, many even sold their properties to invest in the capital market because they believed it was a doubling machine. That when you invest today, tomorrow you reap 100% return. And all of us have seen the result of what happened there. Then number 5, the avalanche of private placement that came to the market with a promise that the companies involved will be publicly quoted thereafter. Most of the companies involved raised monies and are today not listed. Some of them cannot even be traced. Investors are the worst for it. Issuers and investors advisors brought them to the market. I think we should also call them to questions. This company that you brought to the market, where are they? What can we do about them? How do we make them to come to fulfill their promises to the investors who brought money on the premise that when I invest, this company will be quoted and should become liquid? Some of them are still operating. Some of them are insurance companies. Some of them are other companies that are not in the insurance industry. They promised that they will be listed, but up to today, 6 years after, 7 years after, they are not listed. And nobody is saying anything about it. The next point. Delay in mailing out of share certificates, return money, checks, etc., which were actually caused by the astronomical increase in the number of subscribers, the inadequacy of the postal system, and the capacities of the registrar to process the resultant documents. I give an example, or I want to expand this. In the 80s and the 90s, public offerings were to be concluded within 4 weeks or thereabout. After closure of the offer, which means if the offer open for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, if there's an extension, the registrars, the agents, and every participant within 4 weeks must collect and bring that result. And after that 4 weeks, 2 weeks are allotted to returning agents, the bank branches from all over Nigeria, the receiving agents, stockbrokers, agents, to return to the registrar within 2 weeks. And the remaining 2 weeks is for the registrars to collect, to capture this information, and to bring that to the report. And in the 80s and the 90s, the maximum you will see maybe about 20,000 people applying, 40,000 people applying maximum. But in the 2000, what we saw was an upsurge because of the publicity that was given to this public offering. And in the process, you see some offering having as much as 1 million subscribers, some 500,000. And we still have the same 4 weeks. We didn't need to capture. It was absolutely impossible. Many of us had to do 24 hours a day, having to bring in a lot of casual workers to do the capturing. And of course, in the process, there were attendant problems. There were capacity issues. There were system issues. There were power issues. And at the end of the day, these offer people.
Senior Vice President in charge of strategy and M&A, and acquisitions. He's also over there.
Hello. Your bank is white for 35 years, and I believe that you are abreast very well with what is happening in the market. I want to just to give you a basis to give us an overview of actually, because what you have listed, just 3 items, they are very skeletal. And I would want, maybe using your company here, your bank as an example, give us an illustration of why we have that kind of situation. If you look at your bank, First City Monument Bank PLC, as of 2005, you were, the share price as of January 5, 2005 was 5 naira 8 kobo. Then in March 5, 2008, your share price was 19 naira 99 kobo. In January 30, 2012, your share price is around 4 naira. As of 2008 compared to today is in negative territory. As of 2005 compared to today is in negative territory. I want you to compare this with Nigerian breweries. As of January 5, 2005, Nigerian breweries price was 41 naira 81 kobo. March 2008, Nigerian breweries was 55 naira 2 kobo. January 3rd, 2012, Nigerian breweries is 92 naira 8 kobo. And you are trading in the same market. Why this disparity? What were they doing that they didn't enjoy that, the geometric rise that your share enjoyed in 2008? Why have they been steady? And why is your own going both in 2008 and 2005 in negative territory? Thank you.
Two very different sectors. The breweries, if you look at the brewery sector, Nigerian breweries probably enjoys about very dominant market share and subsequently very high margins in its own part of the industry. That is reflected in the financial performance of Nigerian breweries over the years. On the other hand, banking is a volatile sector, and it is a highly competitive sector where you have at least about 20 banks as of today, and at the time in 2005 that you referred to, we had 25 banks. So the intense competition in the banking industry has certainly led to a lot more volatile financial performance, and share price is partially a reflection of the financial performance. In the case of FCMB, it is publicly reported that we declared a loss in the year ended December 2011, and clearly when you do have a loss, your share price will suffer as a result. The loss came about largely because of provisions that were made on loans that have become non-performing in spite of various attempts at restructuring to try and get them to be performing, some of which were sold to AMCOM, some of which we were not able to sell to AMCOM because collateral had either fully depleted or was not available. So the decline or the low point of the share price was really the outcome of that loss that was announced about a month ago. Well, we're pleased to say that certainly since the course of this year we've been seeing a fairly strong rebound with very high quality and healthy earnings. Now, the peak of our share price, which was, as you mentioned, 19 naira and 99 kobo, was, in my view, a function of a number of things. Banks or bank shares were subject to more speculation than probably any other sector. Bank shares were subject to probably more margin lending than any other sector. And bank shares were also the ones that were most liquid and actively traded than any other sector. And therefore, a lot of the people who were looking for large speculative bets on shares, you couldn't find 2-3 billion naira of Nigerian brewery shares just to buy just like that. But because banks were issuing new shares at the time, a lot of people were able to buy heavily those bank shares, and when it came to, unfortunately, selling, they also sold very heavily. Now, at the time, I think, of the peak of our share price, we have recently declared a profit that was about 14 or 15 billion naira profit after tax. And when we look at that earnings performance relative to the share price, it was linked to the fundamentals and the future prospects that people saw, because people felt banks were growing in a very fast pace. I think we certainly benefited from the speculative activity on other banks, so they will compare you with other banks and they'll say, in the case of local investors, if a peer bank to FCMB is trading at 19, then FCMB too must trade at 19, so people will buy your shares till the share price reaches that. And in the case of international investors, they will typically look at certain ratios, which they'll use to calculate what the valuation of the shares should be against compared to peer banks. So I think there are a multitude of factors going on which led to the rise of the share price. But at that time, it was really driven by banks being subject to the highest level of speculative investing that was being done at that time. And FCMB really just being in that sector was a victim of that speculation on the shares.
manipulate to guide your shares. You were fairly advantaged because you had somebody, you here providing the funds, somebody is on the floor of the exchange, handling the shares. Where in the world would you see this trend? And where, considering your exposure as MD since 2006, and considering the way you speak too, you would have been the anglicized. You are exposed to other jurisdictions. Have you ever witnessed this trend elsewhere? And please enlighten us on the issue of pump and dump. Thank you.
Exactly. But in terms of the notion or concept of banks or any other company buying or trading its own shares or circulating its own shares, personally, in my own career, I did not work when I was abroad in capital markets per se. I did not really follow the capital markets. So I was more in something they call debt. I was really doing debt, investment banking, and other Nigeria. So I personally have not tracked it. I don't think any company in the West would admit to manipulating its shares. So there's no right to sit here and start pointing fingers and say people do or do not do that, whether locally or internationally.
Behind the collapse of the stock market are as follows, and the very first one is weak corporate governance. You can't leave such an important issue as a one-liner. It is actually at the bottom, the basis of what we're trying to do, among many others. We have to critically look at what you consider weak corporate governance in order to ensure that we strengthen it. The institutions must be strengthened to be able to deal with, so that we don't get back into this mess. That's number one. Number two, you heard Mr. Owusu a while back, and I pointedly asked him, is he happy today? He was a shareholder in Finbank, and now is saying his bank gone through cyclic episodes. Today, Mr. Owusu, take him as an example, alongside many others. What would you be telling them as the guys who acquired them? That's number one. Number two, what's their fate now that your bank has taken over what used to be Finbank? Thank you very much. Number one, that the bank has taken over his bank without absolute consideration for the fact that he used to be a shareholder in Finbank. Okay, he said that. And there are more people like that in the people in the government who would like to have the work, so that we can use that to drive investor confidence. That's what we have to use that to drive investor confidence. Now that you are the property rights there to that share of the issue. Thank you very much.
I'm listening to one of my because these notes were fairly short notice. Now, on the issue of corporate governance, many people have been making a lot of changes to corporate governance codes, from the SEC to the central bank, and others as well, I'm sure. So in my view, many of the changes already being made are addressing the issues that arose. The fact is that you had situations where boards were not...
Next point. Also, what are the prolonged tenures of bank offers, in particular, occasioned by CBN capital verification exercise. And what was that? Even the 2 weeks that we are giving, or 4 weeks, as it were, after capturing the result already, the CBN were insisting then that they must verify the so-called capital, that they are not just fake records, paper records. And in the process, it do take as much as 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or even 8 weeks in some cases to finish the verification exercise. And by the time you now add 8 weeks to the maybe 4 or 8 weeks that registrars have taken, it becomes like 4 months, 5 months before this. And after that, you now send it to SEC to do their own check and approval. So it's also delayed most of the time the release of public offering results. And of course, it ties down investors' funds unnecessarily. and also affected the capital market adversely. Also, banks were responsible for more than 60%, as it were then, of all activities in the capital market. In fact, about 60% of the capital market transaction then, before the downturn, was attributable to bank shares. So, when the banks ran into problems, of course, it adversely affected the market. Most of the losses, like has been said over time during this public offering, public sitting, has been the issue of people losing their money, and most of the money actually is from the banking sector of the economy. The newly capitalized banks, the 25 billion capital base thing, also made a lot of banks to have excess funds to play with, and the craze or the race to be number one. Every bank then wanted to be number one, and the race and the craze to undo each other. All sorts of products were introduced to the market, one of which is the margin facility thing, and that actually created a lot of customers for the banks, and also created a lot of backlash for the industry, because a lot of people who brought in maybe 30% or 40% in shares, in most cases of other companies, to add to the money that was given to them by the banks, lost both the new investment and the old investment because of the margin facilities. Of course, it was not, like I said earlier on, properly regulated as it were then. Of course, there's one thing that, okay, in addition, the insurance company also were not out in the case. All of them also came to the market to raise funds, to recapitalize, and in the process, some of them that were sold as much as 10 naira, today they are less than 50 kobo. So it's not just the bank, the insurance companies were also in the race. And I also want to add this, that even some real sector or the treasury sector also contributed to the collapse. Some of them came to the market to raise funds after the bank has gone up from maybe 30 naira to 100 naira. They came to raise funds at 90 naira, 95 naira. Today those shares are worth 20 naira or less. So we've been focusing only on the banks. We're not looking at the other sectors. We're not looking at the oil sector. The oil marketers also came to raise money at 100 naira, 120. Those shares are less than 20 naira today. So we should also look at that too. They are also critical. And there's another thing that was raging there. Unfortunately, I didn't put it there, but if you permit me, I'll just mention it. The issue of preferential allotment that were not properly controlled by the regulators added to contribute to the collapse to your account same day or at worst the following day. So that this issue of I'm not receiving my dividend, I'm not receiving my certificate will be a thing of the past. In addition to that, SEC should be in the vanguard of encouraging shareholders to manage their accounts with registrars. Additionally, the Central Bank of Nigeria should direct all banks to accept dividend warrants into savings accounts so as to assist shareholders with that account in banks. Somebody has mentioned that before. One of the major reasons why we have unclaimed dividend is that people who have savings accounts, we just collect this dividend and we pile them together because we have to pay them too. And I belong to a committee of CBN on security settlement system, and we have said that before. Let mandatorily, not by moral solution, mandatorily, compulsorily, ask the banks as a matter of urgency to begin to accept dividend into savings account. They may ask for one or two things as KYC, but then they should not turn back people who are shareholders who have only savings account. I think something should be done. I think National Assembly will also assist us to look into that. The committee should endeavor to get a copy, I'm talking of this committee now, of the report submitted by the National Address System Review Committee, which was prepared by NIPOST on behalf of the Ministry of Information and Communication. As I speak to you, I've been talking to them in the past few weeks on how to get this document. It was a market-wide committee. We sat for many months. What I'm trying to say is we have a lot of problems with our postal system as it were now. There are no area code, no postal codes. You will see one address, something, Major Street, the wire. Where is the wire? A lot of people have home addresses as their addresses, and these things don't get to their homes because the postal system does not have the reach to get it to them. Most of them that get their things are only people that have PO box addresses, and they are not 100%. So we need to address this issue of national postal system. And my communication or my discussion with people in that post is that this document has been moving from one minister to the other. At a point in time, we had the Ministry of Communication and Information. The then minister, Prof, had the document that before she could settle down, she left the government. The new one came. Before it could settle down, the minister was broken into two. And today, the document is hanging somewhere. I think this honorable committee should ask NIPOST to bring that document. Let's look at it and see what we can do to address the perennial issue of NIPOST problems. This will improve capital market based delivery, and it will reduce cases of unclaimed items, including dividends. A general review of laws guiding the capital market operation, be it CAC or CAMA, be it ISA, all this document should be reviewed again by the National Assembly. As of today, yes, they may have what they call waiver, but as of today, what represents shareholding, what you can have to represent as you have a share is certificates. And as long as that is still there, people will be asking certificates. Your evidence of dividend is by sending dividend warrant to you. As long as that is still in the books of our log books, people will still be insisting. Some people will even take it to court if you do otherwise. So there is waiver or there are waivers, but then I think we should look at those laws that have been since 1968 and early 70s, review them to bring them to acceptable international best practices. To prevent identity theft, we encourage the rollout of national identity numbers without further delay. The National Identity Management Commission should be given the needed impetus. What do I mean by this? In the capital market today, of course, before you can sell your shares, before you can claim your dividend or some other things, we insist on signature. And that's what we know as registrar to identify you. But if there's a unique ID number, or ID card number, or national ID number, and biometrics, we do away with the issue of certificates and the issue of signatures. But as of today, the only way I can identify you as a shareholder and give you your rights, as I went to, is when you can sign a signal correctly. But today, somebody who bought shares 5-6 years ago may not be able to sign what he signed then. And of course, as a registrar, if I verify wrongly, I will still be punished. I will be made to pay back. So the only thing I say is, if you cannot sign what you signed then, go back to your bank to get the banker's confirmation, and I won't receive visa. It's Kumbaso. Most banks will insist now that if I even do it for you, you pay me. And the person who has only 10,000 to claim, he still has to bring 5,000 naira before he can do it. And it's their customer. I think that should also be looked into. Most of the banks are of that. And the only way I can regularize your signature is if the bank gives me a letter of comfort that you are their customer and you sign like this, authenticated by the banks, I verify if it's okay, I accept it. But most banks are not willing to do that. The ones that are doing that, they are charging the investors, and it's becoming a kind of rat race. I think on this note, I want to pause and wait for questions. Thank you very much.
Doesn't your application to your bank, for whom you also act as a registrar, was a conflict of interest? No, this one is not to you, because they are not affiliated to any bank. Certificates will be made less cumbersome for investors. And what is the ultimate way to achieve complete dematerialization? And the next question is, what can be done about unclaimed dividends?
There was upsurge in the number of investors and the number of weeks that were given to collect and release results was not good for upward. I mean, when you were having 20,000 applications, you were given 2 weeks. Now you have 1 million, and you have given 2 weeks. Of course, in the process of trying to meet these 2 weeks, you bring a lot of people who are not your regular staff. And that was powerful, generally all registrar. You bring a lot of people who are not regular staff to capture for you. There were a lot of mistakes in the process.
So there were figures.
Number of applicants first.
Okay.
There were also in the number. From like 40,000, we now have 1 million, we have 500,000, and you have the same number of weeks to process this document. Of course, the most of the exams are not, and we didn't have the capacity to do it. And the best way to be able to meet this deadline is to bring a lot of casual staff to capture for you. Of course, the attendant problem of the wrong capture of addresses, or even in some cases names, in some cases the number of rooms, and you have to balance and rebalance again. And eventually, I mentioned the issue of capital verification by CBN. And if after 4 months you apply and the certificates are not out, of course, as far as everybody is concerned, is the registrar. But meanwhile, until approval is given, registrar cannot put certificates. Even after you have put certificates, they are ordinary paper until it is sealed by the company. You have to send it back to the company to apply their seals before you can post that. And of course, we have a lot of companies coming at the same time. I think one of the issues that there were the timings were not regulated. You see, at a point in time, about 10 banks were raising funds in the market at the same time. No spreading, and of course, the process is also overwhelmed. If the process has capacity to post only 200,000 certificates, and within the same week or the same week, you have as much as 2 million being dumped at them. They can't post them. I'm not trying to shift blame. I'm mentioning to people that if the registrars didn't have the capacity, were dead because of the upsurge. So all of them just came together to cause the issue of delaying post services, in posting this. So, like I said, it was a period of madness. All of us were in there, and we have learned our lesson. And that's why I'm saying we should do more of electronic development, electronic application, and so on and so forth. And the development processes should be simplified. Like I said, there are commissions that were used to look at the problems of the market and to provide solutions. And we have done that. And the report are the SEC to deal with. Application with banks, any conflicts, I would say yes and no. Yes and no. It depends on who the bank is. I in another capacity, first registrar, to affiliate or first time. But I'm also registered for that and to other companies. As of today, we are registered for 3 companies, both hotel and hotel restaurant too. I can speak for myself as first registrar that there's no way anybody, first bank or I'm registered to, we ask me to do it anytime. I told oh, I won't. But I can't speak for others. So I think what CBN is trying to do now, by saying you cannot be subsidiary of the banks again, I think it's another way of trying to solve the problems that arose. But I want us to realize the issue of all registrars because they are affiliates of banks, they compromise. No, it's not enough cases. There are some cases that, but I think we should deal with each case on its merit or its merit. Then, I think I also addressed that. And I said, for me to say you are the owner of it, you must sign the signature you sign at the point of purchasing the share, if it was 30 years ago. Or 40 years ago. Because that's the only way I know you. I don't on a daily basis. When you apply for the share, you don't come to the registry. You fill forms through one bank in Kutangura, one in Ibadan, or in village. So all the forms comes to Lagos. All I just see therefore, I fill it in, I capture your signature. If 5 years down the line, you want to verify, and you can't sign that, as if you are a fraudster. I want to be sure I'm dealing with who bought the shares. I'm really sure. Otherwise, if where people forge signature with so, of course, we have been right. So, everyone wants to be very careful to protect the interest of the investor and your interest too, because if you are seen to have a head, you'll be punished for it. So, I want to be very careful that I'm dealing with the right shareholder. And that's why I talked about the issue of national identification or identity management. I also talked about the issue of banks being asked to stop charging for bankers for control. So that's the only way I can use to verify your foreign signature if I'm not satisfied with the funds. And of course, the company has to come to our offices to bring your national ID card and national passport. But let me tell you, sir, if you are here, somebody will bring international passport in your name, and it's not you. You are still keeping here. Somebody will even bring not foreign passport. You know that if it is just foreign, say you this transaction, we won't take it. But they tell passports. So what do we do? So there's a lot of identity theft in Nigeria. For us to nail this once and for all, I think the National Identity Management Commission should be given the kind of feeling, the kind of impetus that they require to go into action to the issue once and for all. And also the issue of everybody into the dematerialization process. Ensuring that all your shares are in electronic form. You don't have to come to the registrar to verify signature. The only time you come to me is when you are changing your address or you want to get your payment. Otherwise, don't come to me. Even the dividend thing, if everybody is made possibly to do e-dividend, you don't have to come to me. Like I said, an agent took place in Lagos. I've been alerted that my dividend has. That's e-dividend. So I think through CSCA or the materialization should be given the required urgent attention it needs. FCC has been trying on this with the but I think you should give a deadline. Yes, everybody will not buy into it eventually because of the karma provision. However, I think a lot of people will still buy into it. As I see, most of the companies that came into the market in 2008, most of them have almost 90% or only 40%. Especially the companies that are the bonds and all of them have 100% compliance. As a bond, you supply your account number, you supply your CSS number. I think that should also go forward. Be the decision for equity for other share. If you apply for the market, you must supply your CSS number at the issue. Supply your account number so that even if you have it will be posted to you, it will be e-credit to your account. What is to achieve the I think I mentioned that. I think that's by regulation or by fiat. Make everyone compulsory to do it at less cost. So that people will be there will be a kind of for people to want to dematerialize. Until the mention what we can do. Both the whole stock grow before. I make those things at this time. And if you want me to bring supporting documents, whatever, I will bring it. As of today, when we talk about dividend policy, dividends are due 15 months and above and below 12 years. I will say, sir, that the stock of is not 10%. It may be big in terms of absolute figure, but it's not up to 10% of what was declared last 10 years. I've given that information to SEC before. So yes, continually there is big in terms of percentage compared with the before the dividend. That's reduced drastically. But it can be reduced to zero if we implement the compulsory dividend and enforce banks to take dividend into savings accounts.
We talked about some errors that were made. We've talked about the bailout of the banking sector by AMCON, and AMCON had not been fair to the investors. We have had a number of suggestions as to what AMCON needs to do in this direction. In your own opinion, what should AMCON do for investors? That is one leg of the question. Then, in the case of nationalized banks, what should AMCON do for shareholders and investors on the issue of nationalized banks? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
E-dividend, e-allotment. My own judgment, I don't think it's something we can hit the ground running with right now. Yes, there's the appreciation of ICT in day-to-day transactions and all of that, but the truth of the matter is that if we're talking about the retail investors in Karagamada, all those places, in some parts of Ekiti and all of that, how do we bring them into the pool? Knowing too well that everything we're trying to do to heal this market is not targeted at one man who can buy so much of shares sitting in Lagos. That's number one. So, how to wrap this around and then factor them into what takes the market from where we are to where we should be is what I think you may want to speak to. Number two, you said, of course, you vouched for FBN where you work and all of that. But how many registrars do we have? Then how many can you stricto sensu say they can say what you are saying now? Because at the end of the day, you had an institute which should standardize practice. If the practice is not standardized, no matter how well some of you are doing, those other bad guys will take you down. And when they take you down, they take the market down with it. Number three, of course, you talked about preferential allotment not controlled by SEC. That is very profound because we've had right here of the level of havoc that preferential allotments have turned out to be. So, why do you think SEC is not rising up to that responsibility? And how do we get SEC to rise up to that responsibility? And lastly, you talked about companies that never did AGM, yet their prices rose. I want you to also situate that in the context of why they happen and how we can forestall them from happening again. Thank you very much.
I'll take it from the beginning. The issue of why trying to address the problems and the palliatives or some of the way of addressing some discomfort and some further mistakes. And I talked about the issue of alcohol. What I meant, I said was a good woman. It has come to take away the toxic instruments and loans, and it has brought about some stability in the banking industry. However, what I was trying to say was, for the likes of Union Bank, the large film bank that has been taken over by FCNB, the likes of Ocean Bank, that has been taken over by Eco Bank, the likes of Intercontinental taken over by Access Bank. There are some ratios that were there. No matter how small, they've been able to half bread together, not. They've been able to take some part of their investments by way of giving them some shares in the new entities. But for the case of the other three banks, the investment that lost their money totally. And I'm saying, if the federal government through AMCO will take over some of my assets, you may say it is a negative share capital, but some assets were attended. We had issues in the past of the likes of Alpha Merchant Bank and some other banks that were liquidated. As I speak to you today, after NDIC and CBN made effort to recover some of the bad credits, the creditors, the